Hi there. Good afternoon. My name is Christine Singer-Lina, producer of What's Up Whittier, a homegrown podcast. It's so great to see you guys. Hello, everybody. I know we're all quarantined, so I haven't been able to see anybody out and about, but I'm grateful that we're all here on this live together. As a lifelong Whittier resident, I want to create a future where everyone, every parent, every child, every person in Whittier and LA County has a place they can call home. Whether you've lived here for 50 years or 5 weeks, you're my neighbor. And our community deserves to be treated with dignity, respect, and have a place of their own to live. Over the past year, I have learned so much from others and professionals about homelessness, and even reflected on my own experiences. For me, this work is personal. My podcast, What's Up Whittier, has allowed me to interview local businesses, nonprofits, and community members. And we all share one thing in common. We all love Whittier. It's our home. Today, our community and our world is facing a pandemic. While no one is safe from COVID-19, some of our Whittier neighbors are without housing, and hundreds of thousands of rent-burdened residents across LA County are among the most vulnerable to the health and financial impacts of this crisis. Right now, there are 15,000 people experiencing homelessness in LA County who are considered high risk for COVID-19. That means that 15,000 of the people currently sleeping on the streets are seniors and or have a chronic health condition. These people are our neighbors. They deserve to feel safer even with no home. That's why the United Way of Greater Los Angeles has launched a pandemic relief fund to bring immediate assistance and daily necessities to people living on the streets and at risk of homelessness. These people are students, individuals, families. We must use this crisis as an opportunity to build momentum and support for affordable and supportive housing in our communities to end homelessness once and for all. 3 years ago, we voted to pass Measure H, which has increased the ability of service providers to reach out to folks experiencing homelessness and help them find permanent solutions. Today, you will hear stories of courage and compassion, of overcoming hardship and finding new beginnings. You will hear from political leaders and service providers, and from folks who've experienced homelessness and chartered new beginnings. The goals are simple. Give people a chance to share their courageous stories so that we can all better understand the pressures that tens of thousands of people are facing here in Whittier and across LA County. And it's also a chance to understand the range of resources and services that are part of helping all of our neighbors thrive. Today, we will take a look at the progress we've made. We will also recognize what we need to continue to do to build a community where everyone is in. We are so grateful for the support from so many people to make this afternoon possible. I want to start by thanking our partners in this community who are tackling homelessness head on. Whittier First Day, The Whole Child, Corporation for Supportive Housing, Sustainable City, and Stories from the Frontline. Now, I am honored to welcome our first speaker. Through the Corporation for Supportive Housing, Mary Martinez is a CSH Speak Up advocate. CSH Speak Up supports developing skills for people to reclaim their lived experience stories as messages of hope, to create change with a curriculum that empowers supportive housing residents to become community leaders. So what is supportive housing, right? It's actually quite simple. Supportive housing is housing equipped with wraparound services on site in the building, such as healthcare and job training that help people get back on their feet and pursue fulfilling and meaningful lives. When we say homes end homelessness, we're often referring to supportive housing that can transform lives. Since receiving supportive housing, Mary has also become a peer specialist and wellness outreach worker. She is currently working with Voices of America and Safe Haven to get 40 veterans off the street and into a refurbished building. We're excited to hear her story. Please welcome Mary Martinez.
Hi, my name is Mary Martinez, and I'm a first responder and a CSH advocate and I'd like to tell my story. Usually, I'm not in front of a camera for one, so forgive me if I'm a little nervous. I'm usually with the paper in front of my face and telling my story, but I want to tell it more from my heart than from what's on the paper. During these hard times that COVID-19, we're just really trying to hold down the fort. I work for VOA, Volunteers of America, and Safe Haven. We just opened up a new building for veterans, and this is what I'm doing now for myself and for others. I'd like to start off really by telling you my story though. I used to be homeless for 5 years. I was disabled. I couldn't walk at all. I was on drugs. I didn't have any family. And I really felt lonely. And I didn't think there was any hope for me until someone cared enough to help me and see that there's another way of living. When I did that, they put me in a shelter in Pasadena, Union Station, and they got me help. They got me to the doctors, mental, physical, emotional help, anything that I needed. Once I was strong enough to get on my own, they gave me housing. Once I got in my housing, I went back to school. I got my certificate to be a peer specialist, a wellness outreach worker, and there was no more room for drugs in my life. And I got 2 hip replacements, and now I can walk. I'm actually wearing heels for the first time in many years. And I'm so happy, and I feel so grateful to the people that helped me that I just want to give back. So I'm telling my story to let you know that any money that goes into housing is well appreciated, because I want to show my gratitude and tell my story. When I wanted to pay it forward, I made the choice. I had to just do what I had to do to get right in myself and by God and with my family. And now I believe I'm doing the right thing. Thank you, and my name is Mary Martinez, and I'm your neighbor.
Thank you, Mary. Laurie Darrington has been a resident of Whittier for approximately 25 years. Most of her career, Laurie has worked in the healthcare industry. For about 17 years, she assisted seniors with basic healthcare needs, including end-of-life care. During her time in Whittier, Laurie was without housing. She lived on the railroad tracks and in Parnell Park. Since her time as a resident at Whittier First Day, Laurie has been housed for 3 months. She is an aspiring hairstylist who uses artistic expression to heal. She is passionate about sharing her story and hopes to become even more civically engaged. Please welcome your neighbor, Laurie Darrington.
Hello, my name is Laurie Darrington. I've been a resident of Whittier for approximately 25 years. I currently reside at Whispering Fountains in Whittier, where I've resided approximately 3 months. First, I'd like to thank First Day for all they've done for me and for inviting me to share my story. I also want to thank everyone who's given me the opportunity to be with you all today. My hope is that something I share about my journey will inspire you. Most of my career I worked in the healthcare industry. I spent approximately 17 years attending to the healthcare needs of the elderly. I enjoy working with the older generation. I've had some wonderful experience and enjoy developing priceless relationships. However, life doesn't last forever, and my last 3 clients passed away on my shift. I lived in one of their homes, and unfortunately the house I was living in gave me short notice and the house was sold. I had 2 huge dogs to take care of and with nowhere to go. I packed up some necessities and my dogs, and away we went to a life-changing journey called homelessness. I'd met some homeless neighbors who had become unhoused prior to my situation, and I'd seen them in our neighborhood, and I decided to reach out to them for support. I spent about 3 to 4 months on the railroad tracks on Lambert behind the pomegranate and oleander trees. This is where life began looking a little darker and a little darker each day. The darkness turned into depression, which led me into the darkest realm I'd ever experienced, and the weight of depression unbearable to carry. My self-esteem still suffers to this day. The streets can be a lonely, empty place, and if you don't understand the rules and respect them, you'll be eaten up like a wolf. I became consumed in a world of hopelessness and despair, void of trust, void of love, with no future. I remember thinking to myself, Laurie, is this how you want to go out? I felt like this was the end and this was it. And I had to ask myself, is this really how you want to go out? So, having developed some unhealthy habits in order to survive, healthy decisions became harder and harder to achieve. Let me tell you why I didn't work and why I didn't have a job. Imagine your days being consumed with where you were going to eat and what you were going to eat and where you were going to sleep. Things that seemed so simple, like making phone calls, became a struggle. Keeping a charged cell phone, for one. Imagine feeling so down on yourself that you avoid using a mirror and going into a public restroom and having the doors shut in your face because now you've become one of them. So from the tracks, I upgraded to Parnell Park. During that time, there was only a handful of us. We looked out for each other and respected the kids at the park. When I was there, it was just a small group of us, a small group of friends. Let me tell you about a gentleman by the name of Steve Diaz. He's a member of the outreach team at First State, which is a homeless service provider here in Whittier. He would go out to the streets, the alleys, under bridges, and the riverbeds, and reach out to the homeless people. He would reach out to me and would help me to connect with resources. He'd help me with paperwork and rides to court, because at that time I'd acquired a handful of trespassing and camping tickets. Steve was a diligent soldier who dedicated his mind, his heart, his soul, and most of his time was spent helping the homeless crisis. Steve's the type of person this world needs. He did his part to make sure the world is a better place for us all. You'd never hear a complaint from Steve. He never judged anyone, and I definitely appreciate Steve Diaz. He regularly reached out to the people at Parnell. By the time I met him, I was full of shame and guilt-ridden. I'd become hopeless and desperate. My typical reaction to someone like Steve would be to turn the other direction because I didn't want to focus on Laurie. I didn't want to talk about Laurie. I didn't like Laurie. But I could tell he wanted to help. At the same time, the Department of Mental Health, also known as DMH, had their team regularly going to the parks. One day, I saw a big man walking towards me with a woman wearing a tag around her neck with keys dangling. He introduced his name as Edgar DeMoss from the Department of Mental Health. He asked me, "Is your name Laurie?" And I answered yes. And from that day on, another relationship began. Life was now becoming a little less stark and a little more hopeful. I would continue to see Edgar on a regular basis. He would bring a counselor, a social worker, a nurse, and interns to talk to me. They'd sit so patiently and hear me speak and cry about my situation. I began to trust again. There was a real small window of hope, which ultimately became a little brighter. My mother instilled faith in me. She would regularly remind me that winter always turns to spring. Steve got me into the First Day shelter where I was waiting for my Section 8 housing declared. This allowed me some time to shake off some of my destructive habits that I had and to develop and prepare me to be responsible. This was my chance to learn how to live a healthy lifestyle again and to learn to live a life I felt I deserved, the life I'd grown so far from in such a short period of time. Today I'm enrolled in a class to learn basic haircutting skills. As part of my recovery from homelessness, I began to make t-shirts like this one here. I began to make t-shirts from the streets, and I used new but mostly repurposed t-shirts to make my works of expression and to process and work through my old lifestyle. It's my way of processing and letting go of the streets and homelessness. Manhole, sewer, and utility covers are my tools, the same sewer covers I laid my head on for several years. I became the streets, and the streets was an extension of me. My life story includes the streets. This process has helped me to heal. Each time I'm able to sell a shirt, I salute to that part of my journey, and it becomes my past. I hope someone can find something about my journey that will support them. We can all benefit from learning from each other. After all, my success wasn't my success without the help from my community. My wish is that people understand that you can find hope from homelessness. I want to shed a little light from my experience. I've spoken during public comment at my local city council. I'm learning to share my story with the community, and I invite you to do the same. It's very important to be engaged with our communities. My name is Laurie, and I'm your neighbor.
Thank you, Laurie, for your hard work and dedication. Kerry, like Mary, is a CSH Speak Up advocate. Kerry lives in Compton with her little dog and companion, Lucky Butt. She loves her home and has easily made friends with others in her community. Kerry has traveled to Sacramento to speak to legislators on behalf of those currently living on the street. And her upbeat attitude makes her a terrific advocate for others. Please welcome Kerry Bales.
Hi, I'm Kerry, and I'm a CSH Speak Up advocate. I was chronically homeless for over 20-some years. As of 2012, there was a homeless count. I was homeless in the riverbed in Bellflower, or Lakewood, and there was a homeless count. And it was Kingdom Cause that came around the area that I was at, and they did a questionnaire, and they were giving out $5 cards for McDonald's and a blanket, and I was hungry and cold, so I said, sure, I'll do it. And then I answered the questions, and I kept saying, you know, I need to answer these questions honestly, so because I really do need help. I needed help. I was in a really abusive relationship at the time. It was just an ongoing thing with me, and I was at my wit's end, ready to commit suicide and the whole thing, and I was done. I needed help. So when they did the count, Kingdom Cause, they came back for me. Kim Burnett, Julie Hernandez, and Morena, they came back for me. They came back out there and came and got me, and the day they did, it was, I knew it was going to be a bad day. So they gave me their card, and they left, and that day it was like he spit in my face, and I knew it was going to be worse than that if I didn't get out of there. So I grabbed my backpack and my dog and got my bike and went to Kingdom Cause, and they were closed. It was lunch. They had an hour, so I had to wait, and it was okay though. Looking over my shoulder because I was scared he was going to come after me, but he didn't, and I finally got in there and told him if they didn't get me out of there, I was going to die, either by my own hand or by his hand, or both. So Marina made a call. She was making calls because I told him, don't waste my time, because my dog's going with me. I'm not going to leave him. I'm going to give him away. So she says, okay. And they came back not even 20 minutes later and said, this never happens. Path in Hollywood has a bed, which never happens. That is the only place that has a kennel, and they're waiting for you. And I was like, so they packed me up and got me out. They got me there, and that was the beginning of a beautiful life. So Kingdom Cause took me up to CSH Speak Up Advocate, and I graduated 2016, I think it was, and I got to go to Sacramento, our capital, and speak there, and for Hilton Foundation, I did for Parks and Recreations, the whole state. They came in, and then they did an article on me, on being homeless with a dog. So, yeah, it's been a long road. I'm housed 2014 here in Compton. I've been here since 2014, and I'm still here. I have struggles, but I love my place. I'm blessed. I have a roof over my head, and especially now times, it's really, really crazy to be out there. So, thank you. My name is Kerry, and I'm your neighbor.
Thank you, Kerry, for sharing your story. Art in all forms is a universal connector. It crosses boundaries and brings people together. That's why everyone in Stories from the Frontline always includes some form of music. I am thrilled to welcome to the stage Lauren and Mike, our friends from Long Beach. Lauren has lived in Long Beach for over a decade, but for years before that, she didn't have access to the stability of a home. That did not deter her. Through stable housing and supportive services, she was able to steer herself in the direction that she wanted to go. She's now working at Link Housing, paying it forward. And oh, did I mention that she plays a mean guitar? Lauren and Mike.
What's going on? I know y'all in quarantine at home, but we're gonna bring it to y'all anyways. I go by the name of Michael. This is Doran. We're days past when we say that, so let's go home. Yeah. Rock with us one time.
Hey there, brother. Do you need another helping hand to find your way? 'Cause you're stuck in the past you can't shake away. Hey there, sister. Do you think I missed you? All the pain that's in your eyes 'cause you can't seem to find yourself inside. There's no reason take my hand, I'll show you stars. We can find ourselves today. A better tomorrow. If you still thinking about yesterday, let's go. Go, 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 go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Hey there, mother. You don't have to suffer with the choices that you make. We all have things, don't be ashamed. Hey there, father. Don't make it harder on the guilt you carry here. Can't change the best when it's all again. Yeah. There's no reason I a better tomorrow. If you still thinking about yesterday, let's go. Go, 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 go. Let's go. Let's go, go, go. Let's go.
Check me out, like 26 years, been a long time running. I've been on this path for a long time coming. Happiness and peace have been all I've wanted. I feel like my whole life I've been hunted up by the things that has shaped me today. Lord, take me away and make me away through this wilderness of bitterness. I can't sit away. I get a little weary, but I'm braver today. Stories that are told, keep journeying down this road. I'm searching for the gold, not worried about these loans. I'm not trying to break my mix. Gotta take my chance. One dance will take me. Say I've been pushing, gotta push it, keep on pushing, on and on. I'll give everything before I'm gone. And if I clean my heels, can I find home? If you're vibing with us, one hand in the air. We're reaching for the stars today. Hey, yeah. Yes, we can. A better tomorrow. If you still think about yesterday, let's go. Go. Let's go. We going home, y'all. We going home. Let's go. Let's go. Go. Hey, let's go. We going home, y'all. Stay safe. Let's go.
That was truly beautiful. So we've talked about how voters have approved more resources than ever before to fight homelessness. But we know it doesn't just take money. It takes community support and persistence to make sure solutions become a reality. United Way, through its Everyone In campaign, recognized that building housing wouldn't just happen. It required careful coordination amongst communities and lots of education and organizing. See, the numbers only tell part of the story. The Everyone In campaign has held more than 235 local community events, trainings, and organizing actions, and signed up more than 100,000 Angelenos to maintain the political will needed to get housing built. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce someone who is showing up every day to help. Our next speaker, Allison Henry. Allison is the East San Gabriel Valley field organizer for Everyone in LA, and as a member organizer for Pasadena Tenants Union, helped bring additional tenant protections and support to Pasadena's tenant majority. That's pretty awesome right there. She is also a poet and a co-founder of AENSJ Collective. Please welcome Allison Henry.
Hi, I'm Allison Henry. I'm a tenant in Pasadena. I have 2 greyhounds and adore them. And prior to becoming the San Gabriel Valley field organizer for Everyone In, I was in educational sales and an ESL teacher for many years. I'd always been politically engaged, but not at the local level around housing and homelessness. That changed a few years ago when my neighbors and I received large rent increases of between 25 and 60%. I organized a few of us to meet with our local council member to walk him through the steep rent increases and explain the decimation it would bring to our 16-unit apartment community. My neighbors and I were not prepared for what we experienced that day from someone who was supposed to represent the non-property owning majority of Pasadena. We were told that if we couldn't afford the rent, we needed to move. We were disposable. He is a landlord and he was looking at things only from that vantage point. We weren't recognized as community members by the guy we had just voted in as a council member. If I had known of the callous response, I wouldn't have organized my neighbors to take the day off of work or school to share their stories. Most of the neighbors wound up having to move. We lost 8 kids from the apartment complex. The management company would not negotiate with the families, so they all had to move out in March, middle of the school year. That galvanized me into local housing politics and local politics in general. So fast forward 3 years, I'm a paid organizer with Everyone In, and I have some local wins under my belt, including things like early eviction moratoriums for COVID-19. I helped get over 10,000 signatures with a team on a local ballot initiative. And while we weren't successful, 10,000 signatures is an awful lot to get for a local petition. I organized a tenant delegation to meet with our city to discuss greater protections. And I worked with tenants. I met and counseled tenants, went to court with them. And in that work, I heard stories of struggle, of shame, of fear. People who thought they had been doing the right thing by living frugally, independently, but not having the means to purchase their own home. I met so many cancer survivors who were losing battles with their landlords and the rent creep that outpaced their wages and benefits. These ladies, most of them ladies, these ladies had beaten cancer only to look homelessness in the face. And the stats don't lie. 75% of people who are homeless right now got there through a medical issue, a job loss, or a rent increase they could not absorb. It's so easy to get there, and it's so hard to come back. Last year, I participated in Pasadena's homeless count. When you participate in the homeless count, you sign like a non-disclosure act to keep stories private, and I will honor that. I will only share that everyone should participate in their homeless count. It occurs in January. Falling into homelessness is so easy, and our society is so contemptuous when it happens. I have bad asthma, and that is always on my mind as I fret about my fellow humans sleeping outside or having their belongings considered trash and criminalized. I want to be part of the solution. I want to change the words of this song. I want to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. But when they do, I want to be there with them to support and learn. I want to be the informed voice and organizing voice to pull people to support various housing projects, to see our unhoused brothers and sisters as ourselves. I work with local housing groups in the San Gabriel Valley to educate communities on issues around homelessness and to advocate for policies to end homelessness and to transform how our society sees housing and people. Will you please join me in this work? It means getting involved in local politics, knowing your city council, joining a local group such as Sustainable City that works on policies to end homelessness, join a tenants group, start reaching out to a local service provider like Whole Child. You can join us at Everyone In la.org. We've got a calendar of events for you to plug in and advocate. You've heard powerful stories today. I hope that inspires you to get involved. We can end homelessness. It is a man-made problem. My name is Allison Henry, and I'm your neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison, for your hard work and your dedication. From South Los Angeles, Kavika Smith is an inspiring 18-year-old. He experienced periodic homelessness throughout his childhood, but leaned on his schoolwork and faith to push through the challenges he faced at home. Kavika is an advocate for eradicating homelessness as a youth representative on his neighborhood council and as a youth ambassador for Imagine LA. He's graduating this year and heading off to college in the fall. Congratulations, Kavika, and please welcome Kavika Smith.
When I was in second grade, my mom and I experienced homelessness, and it was hard to find housing, affordable housing. Everything was too expensive. So we would sleep in a car, we would sleep in shelters, and food wasn't always a given. Sometimes we would go the night without eating. So I would go to school hungry. It was hard for me to pay attention. But I still did my work, I still aced the test. And my teachers never understood what was going on, or they didn't even know that there was anything going on until I told them that I was homeless. And when I told them that they were homeless, they didn't necessarily understand that I was telling them that I was homeless. They didn't comprehend it. They thought just because I was acing tests and I was doing fine and there was no quote unquote signs of me being homeless, that anything was happening. They were surprised that I was able to persevere and deal with the pressures at such a young age. And I even shared the story with my friends. One of my teachers, Mr. Irving, in my 5th grade class, he had me stand in front of the class. Asked me to stand in front of the class and to tell my story. And I told my story, and everybody in the class was crying because we all found out that day that mostly all of us had experienced homelessness. And it was very emotional, but it was also a reality check that just because someone doesn't show the signs doesn't mean that it's not there. And it was a healing moment because we all took that time to affirm one another that we all were great and we all had a purpose, and that this too shall pass. And once I moved out we moved into permanent housing in 8th grade, it was a bit scary because I didn't know if we was going to bounce back into homelessness, because sometimes we'll find housing but then it'll become too expensive and we couldn't afford it, so then we'll go back to being homeless. But it was scary at first. It was a scary phase, and thanks to Imagine LA, we're supported throughout the whole process. One of my mentors, Ashi, who's a stock analyst, he would pick me up on the weekends and we'll go out and hang out and talk about politics, talk about the stock market, talk about all of the things that I was interested in, and he'll always check in and affirm me as well. And that was something that was very dear and near to me because I felt supported and I felt like he was a big brother to me. So I thank organizations like that. And currently now I am going to Morehouse College on a full ride, thanks to Community Coalition, which I'm working with them and I'm working with Imagine LA as ambassadors for both, where we're pushing the agenda to make sure that homelessness is not an issue anymore and it's eradicated. And my name is Kavika, and I'm your neighbor.
Thank you, Kavika, for your courage and persistence. Whittier First Day is a homeless services agency in the city of Whittier that provides street outreach, interim housing, housing navigation, prevention, and supportive services, as well as having a health and wellness center on site. Their mission is to assist individuals currently or at risk of homelessness towards self-sufficiency as defined by them. Today, we're excited to welcome TK Monzon, the CES Program Director of Whittier First Day and clinic nurse on site at the Health and Wellness Center. TK oversees the outreach and housing navigation and rapid rehousing programs at Whittier First Day, Plus, he also manages 2 pop-up clinics. TK, what don't you do? TK will now share his experience as the CES Program Director of Whittier First Day. Welcome, TK.
Thank you for having me. So I came into homeless services around 2010. As a registered nurse, I always felt the need for people to support people on the streets or in the community and not just in the hospital. I ended up volunteering my time at a small pop-up clinic that services people on the streets. And it was a nurse-run clinic led by my now friend, mentor, and colleague, Judy Stockman, in that order. I think I've always been blessed with getting those having a lot of those positive role models in my life. Like Judy, they always emphasize community engagement, the need to collaborate and form partnerships, and you can't really solve big problems on your own, and asking for help is okay. I also think that I also was taught that getting social support is really essential to that whole healing process. As someone who is a deferred action for childhood arrivals or DACA recipient, I can relate to the whole feeling frustrated and having to navigate through barriers. And it's really oftentimes when you're navigating through barriers, it's really not to get ahead. It's oftentimes trying to just make ends meet and survive. I think that kind of experiences gave me that insight and patience for people who really have a hard time trying to process their journey, or even trying to work through, who are really apprehensive about grasping opportunities. I think that's one of the things that I really like about my colleagues, and in terms of success, is that we like to celebrate any success. So we know what it's like to have that kind of hardship, or we can see that kind of hardship in a lot of the people that we work with. So we like to celebrate just the little wins. And we try to impart, or we try to tell people, like, you have to appreciate the gravity of a win or a gravity of a positive, because it's really crucial in having hope or looking to that better day, especially now in that time of need, because it's a pandemic crisis. And my role as a nurse and as a homeless service provider has never been really significant, has been very significant in the past few months. I've done a lot of patient education and on how to not only protect themselves, but protect themselves as a person and mentally. It's really hard, because we have to reinforce the fact that it is okay to not be 100% there. The world's not 100% here right now, and you shouldn't have to have that 100% go in 100%. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to feel frightened. But it's also okay just to also know that there is help out there and people out there are willing to help. I think unanimously everybody wants to end homelessness. It's just the devil's in the details. I think that my whole career has been trying to battle the myth of people choosing to be homeless or people choosing to be on the streets. I don't think it's so much of a choice as it is a result. And it's a result of the rent being too damn high, or it's a result of a disease or hospitalization and the bills are too hard to pay, or the difficult choice of, do I feed my kids, or do I pay rent, or do I pay my medication? Or even, like, do I have to leave the area that I belong in, or that has welcomed me over the years, or the area that I grew up in? A lot of people don't know how to get involved in homelessness, and I really tell them it's really not that hard to get involved, and it doesn't take much. So there's a lot of groups already out there trying to do the great work out there for us. So like joining a homeless coalition or a city consortium or a local group that tries to advocate for homeless, for affordable housing that's not really tied to homelessness, but it does help a lot. Even going to city council to show your support for affordable housing or any efforts to try to combat or end homelessness is a good start. I even invite you to go to a lot of the organizations like ours or the Whole Child or Jovenes or any of our partner agencies, just to try to get a feel of how homeless services are delivered. I think education is a really key thing. So I invite you, and thank you. My name is TK, and I am your neighbor.
Thank you so much, TK. Thanks to the work of TK and his colleagues, Whittier First Day has an extraordinary impact on the lives of residents in the program. So here's a statistic that should shock us all. The last Los Angeles County homeless count showed we have more than 8,400 families without a stable place to live in our communities. Fortunately, here in Whittier and across the county, we have organizations and leaders who are stepping up to help those families one by one. We're joined today by one of those inspiring leaders. Constanza Pachon is a passionate advocate for social inclusion and equity. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Whole Child, an organization that helps families raise emotionally and physically healthy children and have a place to call home. Working in collaboration with other partners, the Whole Child's Imagine Whittier program aims to end the cycle of family homelessness by mobilizing trained volunteer mentors, collaborative public and private resources, and community leaders who understand that a roof over one's head is merely the starting point to a better life. Please welcome Constanza Pachon.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you everyone for inviting me to this program, especially during this COVID-19 crisis, in which we are all trying to find ways to connect and ultimately come out of it stronger. I am Constanza Pachon, the Chief Executive Officer of the Whole Child, a 62-year-old nonprofit organization providing mental health, housing, parenting, and nutrition services to over 12,000 families per year in Los Angeles County. As the Coordinated Entry System lead agency for homeless families in SPA 7, which is the southeast region of Los Angeles, the Whole Child works with over 2,500 families that are experiencing homelessness. We provide them with prevention and diversion services, with crisis housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, employment services, and more. I am incredibly proud to share that in the last fiscal year, we permanently housed 540 families, and they have all remained permanently housed. Before joining the Whole Child, I spent 15 years helping entrepreneurs in the high technology sector. Now, you might wonder why drive an executive in the tech industry to move to social services. Well, in my case, it's lived experience. I was homeless for over 5 years when I was a child. My mom and I jumped from shelter to shelter and experienced all the challenges of living in poverty: unsafe housing, unstable schooling, poor nutrition, mental health issues, and trauma. Our story is ultimately one of success. My mother went on to have her own financial services business, and I have been blessed with a beautiful family of my own and a career very successful that became ever so much fulfilling when I moved to social services. My own experience has made me a believer. I believe that anyone can overcome their challenging situation. It fills me with pride to be able to tell my daughters that all the work that mommy does out there is to help impact positively the lives of many children in our community. I realize that homelessness has many faces. Most think of the unsheltered individual living on the streets and battling substance abuse and trauma when they think of homeless. Very few people will think of homeless families, much less young children. But they are out there. They are living in their cars, sleeping in a friend's couch, or in interim housing shelters. Part of the mission of the Whole Child is bringing the plight of family homelessness to the forefront. We strongly believe that the best way to curb intergenerational homelessness is by rapidly rehousing children and their families and providing mental health services to lessen the traumatic effect of the unhoused experience. We also believe in the power of community support, and through our Imagine Whittier program, we have trained and engaged many people from the community to mentor recently housed families so they can stay the course. Some of the stories that come out of the mentorship program are very touching, because not only they show the positive impact that mentorship and community support have on the recently housed families, but also the wonderful effect that the experience has on the mentors themselves. Due to COVID-19, we have seen a tremendous surge in the need for our housing services, especially preventive services to avoid people falling into homelessness. To everyone watching, thank you very much for caring in the fight against homelessness. It takes an entire village to help our own house neighbors. I encourage you to seek ways to help and get involved in one of the many initiatives out there already working towards ending the plight of homelessness in Los Angeles County. My name is Constanza Pachon, and I am your neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Constanza. I want to thank everyone who has spoken today and give an additional special note of thanks to Whittier First Day, The Whole Child, Corporation for Supportive Housing, Sustainable City, and Marilyn Wells, co-founder of Stories from the Frontline, an initiative of the John and Marilyn Wells Family Foundation. Meeting the organizers at Everyone In, getting to know more people who are committed to ending homelessness, and hearing from our incredible speakers and elected officials has given me even more hope that ending homelessness is possible. In sum, here's what we can expect to see over the next few years. More than 8,000 new units of supportive housing for the most vulnerable. The opening of thousands of units of temporary housing. More outreach to our neighbors experiencing homelessness, from street-level engagements that address mental health, career, and delivering addiction support services to nearby encampments. Now is not the time to sit by. We need to get everyone involved. Thank you all for joining our virtual event today. And I encourage you to keep this work going, whether it's to attend a virtual training, attend an Everyone In community call, getting active on social media, or participating in a local food drive. When you show up, I am hopeful that when this pandemic is over, the community my children will live in will be a brighter one. A city where everyone is in, everyone is home. And now, I am proud to introduce our final speaker of the afternoon, Elise Buick, President and CEO of United Way of Greater Los Angeles. Plus, in 2015, she made history by becoming the first woman to hold this post. Elise is committed to making sure that LA County has enough homes for everyone and that we end homelessness by creating safe, stable, permanent homes. Please join me in welcoming Elise Buick.
I want to thank you all for joining us for our first virtual Stories from the Frontline. I hope you are as touched as I am by the stories that we're hearing today. I know it's hard for us all not to be together, and I hope that you and your families are staying safe during this very difficult time. Now more than ever, our neighbors that are living on the streets need us. And your participating in today says that you want to be a part of helping them and helping us as we really look toward long-term solutions to get our neighbors into safe places during this crisis and ultimately into the housing that they deserve. This has been a crisis that has affected all of us, but it is affecting those on the streets more than ever. Many of them are isolated, being cut off from food, from areas of information, the ability to charge their phones, just basic supplies. The world has shut down around them, leaving them very isolated and vulnerable. Unfortunately, of the 60,000 people experiencing homelessness, we know that 15,000 of them are very much at risk. They are older and they also have underlying medical conditions. So the stakes have never been higher than they are right now for us to all come together to make sure that our neighbors experiencing homelessness have the supplies that they need, that we can reconfigure shelters to safely bring them indoors, that we can stand up hotel rooms for them to quarantine, and that ultimately we can ensure that as we bring them in, we don't have to flip them back out to the streets, but we can work together to bring them into housing. So I urge you to continue your commitment to being involved on this ever important issue. You can do that through joining us at the Everyone In campaign, everyoneinla.org. And you can also give to United Way's Pandemic Relief Fund. Many of those dollars are going to supplies to help our homeless neighbors, hand sanitizers, face masks, basic necessities, as well as providing supplies to the organizations that are on the front lines of this crisis and to the amazing outreach workers that are working hard every day to bring everyone in. I want to thank you so much for being a part of today. And my name is Elise Buick, and I am your neighbor.
Thank you, Elise. In these unprecedented times, it is important that we remember to be good neighbors. Check in on seniors in your neighborhood to make sure that they are getting food safely. Stay at home and wash your hands frequently to keep yourself and your neighbors safe. To get better educated, join the Everyone In community calls to discuss what we can all do and to learn more about the local homelessness COVID-19 response. The Everyone In campaign has also converted its in-person workshops to an online forum in order to keep the public informed and involved in the fight to end homelessness across LA County during this pandemic. Thank you for joining us. Together, we can ensure Whittier and all our neighbors have safe places to live. We can emerge from this crisis a stronger city. My name is Christine Singer-Luna, and I'm your neighbor.